back to the NASI survey, not just about classroom experience, overall student experiences. That survey actually does provide insight into what's happening outside of the academic program. Financial aid, for example, services, all of those. How we're doing in the minds of that particular stakeholder group in regards to customer service. And so we want to just make sure, though, that we don't limit it to a perception that these students are only talking about the academic experience, although they seem to think it's going pretty well in terms of advising and classroom facility. But you know, there's some other areas that they're commenting on.
Right, and thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. President. But my point was that those are just examples. Dr. Eddington indicated that there are others, and I would hope in the see this report that I can see others, everyone that's as a metric, so that we see the full picture.
Well, there's going to be a report,
yes.
obviously.
And
this is just an overview of what the intent is.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your question. It's all good. So, how will we accomplish all of this? With a little help from our friends. You all included, the total campus, community and vendor engagement, and through consultative services provided by Dr. Neil Raisman and Associates, who have been operating in this space of academic customer service since 1999, academic and administrative customer service since 1999. Dr. Raisman is accomplished at providing practical research, solutions, and training to make colleges and universities more successful. He has written several books on the topics of customer service, retention, and enrollment. He has helped numerous colleges, universities, and college-related businesses in the US, Canada, and Europe increase their admissions, enrollment, and retention through his on-campus service excellence audits, workshops, training, and presentations. Dr. Raisman was introduced and presented to approximately 150 campus leaders, including the president and members of his senior leadership team, educating while at the same time assessing where we are and where we need to be. His 36 years as a faculty member, dean, associate provost, president, and chancellor of public, private, and for-profit colleges and universities have provided him a thorough understanding of academia. We have high expectations for Dr. Raisman and his associates, and they are prepared to deliver at an affordable cost. We have reviewed and accepted his proposal and timeline for phase 1, with project activities as outlined on this slide, consisting of a pre-visit off-site analysis by assessing information gathered during the President's Retreat, assessing available institutional data and materials to begin to determine existing customer service levels, to conduct an off-site operational review of existing services, supports, practices, policy, processes, structure, technology that impact service. And as we all know, we can only go as far as technology will allow us for the most part. So investing in that domain will be critical to our success, as well as an on-site participant observer study known by many as mystery shopping, where trained professionals will come onto our campus and conduct studies to test the procedures and processes of some of the areas on campus responsible for recruitment, admission, registration, information desks, and all pertinent points of contact. And we have worked with him to identify future project activities for phases 2 and 3 as outlined on this slide. All of these are dependent on the outputs of phase 1 and availability of human and financial resources to move us forward to sustain the gain. In addition, we will be provided information throughout all phases of this initiative that will identify and prioritize issues with service excellence with, where available and feasible, a low-cost or no-cost solution for each one. In addition, Dr. Raisman and Associates will point out any critical concerns that need to be dealt with as soon as possible, and will identify low-hanging fruit that can be addressed quickly to begin the process of improving service excellence swiftly and positively. So in conclusion, We will be celebrating 131 years of teaching, research, and service at our great institution in October of this year. As President Robinson has stated, it took the vision, direction, support, and efforts of many to get us to where we are today, and it will take all of us, students, faculty, staff, our vendors, and other key internal and external stakeholders to get us to where we need to be. So with an effective campus-wide collaboration, undergirded by a first-class business infrastructure, and by leveraging the best technology that we can afford to buy, we will get to where we need to be in the delivery of service excellence in all we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ingram. I think, trustees, we all noticed that this is an area that we can improve on. I think our goal is that sort of Disney experience, you know, wanting people to walk in, feel happy walking out, not have to go to 800 places and, you know, wait in line for 10 years. So I think that this is something that is a critical investment. I think it's important that we are going to be receiving feedback throughout, so we don't have to wait a year till we get a report to start to make changes. That continuous, you know, as we find, you know, little pain points to address them along the way will be critical, and informing and communicating those back will be important to just continuing to move the needle on customer service throughout the enterprise. Any other questions? Trustee Moore?
You know, just a quick question. I think this is great. I mean, I think about Disney, I think about Ritz-Carlton, all the experiences that we can have here right on the heels. But what have we done relative to getting and prepping our campus community, multiple sites, for this experience that we're about to undertake to get the buy-in?
That actually started with what Dr. Robinson mentioned, his president's retreat. So we had all of our campus managers, leaders, over 150, 180 people at the retreat. And we had Dr. Raisman come and really lay out this customer service vision. And so that was the start of the introduction of the campus to the initiative, in addition to all of the kind of rollout things we've done over the past year about the strategic plan. And we always stress in these sessions that customer service is a priority. And so we prepped in terms of informing everyone of the initiative and what the first steps are. Over the next few months during this off-site process is when we will begin to engage people in helping to collect and provide information that'll be used for the analysis.
So I'm thinking along the highest to the lowest level, from the parking attendant to landscaping, groundskeeping. This is what we're about to be experiencing. This is a change. You're part of it. What does it feel like? You know, it's underway. So I do get the retreat, but just how do we make sure that we're bringing everybody along for the ride at the same time?
Yeah, so we'll make sure that we involve everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Lawson.
Well, good morning. First of all, you know, kind of going back through the presentation, good to see the way, you know, you guys have flowed the dollars. Trustee Reed echoed that, so that's a real positive. On this issue of customer service, you know, I'm really impressed with what is laid out here, because, you know, that's been a concern for a lot of students for a number of years, and I feel like this may not be the excellent way, but it is definitely a way to get our arms around some of the root cause, because I think that's where you need to start, and then you can action plan around those root causes. So, you know, whether the consultant is really necessary or not, because there's so much low-hanging fruit, you know, you guys decide that, but I'm just really pleased with the kind of the progression that I see, you know, you guys attacking this particular issue. And it goes back to the thing that I've been, you know, Dr. Eddington's probably tired of hearing me say this, but the goals that we set for the president have to be cascaded down to the lowest common denominator, such that the individual person, you know, teaching an online class even understands how their performance ladders up, and then ladders up again to the department chair, the dean, up to the senior administration, and ultimately to the president. So there's not that level of connectivity from top to bottom. We'll never achieve some of these lofty targets that we have in front of us, and I just feel like this process that you guys have outlined definitely moves us in the direction.
And I think what we've been talking about is a culture shift, right? Like, how do you change the culture? What does that look like? What does that feel like? How do you have a framework of accountability, but also a framework of inspiration, right? Like, and that's what I mean by the Disney experience. Those people are inspired. They inspire you to want to do better. There's a motivational aspect and element of that. And I think what you've heard around the table is, how do we make sure that everybody on the campus is getting that same level and that same touch point, so that it is a culture shift and it's not seen as sort of from the top and not seen as punitive, because that's not what this is intended to do. It's intended to make it a better experience for everyone.
And within goal number 2 for this civic strategic priority, we are going to be partnering with the Office of Communication to develop a comprehensive communication plan around customer service. I appreciate Chairman Lawson's and explanation of the importance of each employee having a direct line of sight between what they do, how it impacts the organization, how it impacts customer service. And one thing that we did in human resources was to ensure exactly that. So
Now, I think our next opportunity, got to provide the visibility to
absolutely.
the metrics, progress against them, right? So now saying, not just Dr. Robinson, all of
All
our
of the
goals,
university.
they have visibility of how they're doing, and then there's someone at the next above that's providing corrective action at each level along the way, because I think probably one. After we, then it's up to, but I feel like, I'm sorry, I got away from the mic, my voice should be loud enough anyway, but I just feel like we're on the right path, so thank you guys. And Dr. Eddington, Miss Barrington's back there somewhere too, I know she's had a hand in this, so thank you.
Thank you both. If there are no other questions on that, we're going to move on to the update on performance measures. As you may have learned during the last Board of Governors meetings, there were some specific updates to the performance funding measures. Dr. Eddington is going to provide us an outlook on how those are going to impact the university. Dr. Eddington.
All right. First is just an update to you all on where we are with our performance metrics. At the last meeting, we provided you all a projection, but now we can confirm that the outcomes for FAMU on each of the 10 metrics have been validated by the BOG, and we have a total of 72 points this year, which is the highest performance for the institution thus far under the performance funding. And when you look at each metric and how our outcome in 2018 compared to the outcome for the previous year, on 7 of the 10 metrics, our outcome got better, so we had better performance. And then there's 3 areas there that you can see where performance slipped. Number 10, we're counting that as a slip, but that's really negligible. That's not a decline. So the really 6 and 7 are where you see we decrease, and 6 is one of the areas that we have to pay some attention to, which I'll touch on in a couple of slides. So that's a snapshot of our overall performance.
So just to be real, number 7 is slightly, I don't want to say misleading, but it is a decline, but we're still the highest in the university system. So I don't want us to see that as a negative on ours. We're still going to be a 10, and we're still significantly higher than the university system. So it's that sounds like it's a,
It's a good clarifying point, because honestly, I misunderstood that.
Yes.
So, same here.
So it's going down, which is not something we necessarily want to see, but we are still very, very high score on that. Go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
Madam Chair, I think another way, another question to ask is, these did we point someone? Okay, that's a different question. And
I think that's the next slide.
It certainly wasn't 7 and 10, and so it was really number 6.
Yes. So that's the next slide. The points.
Yeah, so this is showing the metrics and the actual scores that we received, and whether or not it was for excellence or improvement. And the key take-home message here is, in addition to how we performed on each metric, is really making sure we all have an understanding of this structure. We have 2 categories for getting points. Excellence is when you get points because you're in the excellence threshold established by the BOG for that metric, or you can get points if you show improvement according to the scale for improvement. So when you look at excellence, we got 49 points for excellence. That means we got points because we're within the excellence range on those metrics, and you can see the E's there tell you which ones. And then there are the 23 points for improvement. Those are the metrics that we have to focus on. The excellence points are not going to change that much from year to year for us. It's the improvement points. And so when you look up there under 2018 and the numbers that have I's next to them, particularly at number 4, 4-year graduation rate, metric 5, academic progress rate, and number 9, percentage of bachelor's awarded without excess hours, that's where we have to focus on making continuous improvement, or we will slip in terms of our overall outcomes. So that's what internally what we're focused on. I just want to make sure the board understands that dynamic.
I would clarify even, so I know we're going to talk about the 4-year graduation rate one, but number 4, we have 5 improvement points, but we are, if you notice, the previous slide at 21.8%. So all of our points are from improvement. To get 1 excellence point, our graduation rate would have to be 38.8%. So know that if we don't improve, we get 0 in that until we get our 4-year graduation rate up to the 38.8. So those that, as Dr. Ennington is saying, there is much more variance for us in the improvement scores, because if we not improve and we are not in the excellence range, we don't get points there.
Madam Chair,
Sorry, Trustee.
I just wanted to, I hate just to stick my nose in front of everybody, but I just wanted a point of clarification about the 4-year graduation rate. You say we need to push it to 38%?
So on the, and Dr. Ennington will get into this on a next slide, but for a 1 in the BOG metric to get 1 point for excellence, your 4-year graduation rate has to be 38.8%. Okay. We are currently at 21 points. Chair Lawson?
Well, no, I echo what you said, and I think that put our plans together, we put our plans. So I think my recommendation is acceptable for us to make some tweaks in that where we adjustments, as legislators shifted from a 6. So we may need to shift some of our initiative, potentially funding, Madam Budget Chair, just make sure that we've got the right level of resourcing behind that initiative. I know Dr. Hudson and the team are working with the whole academic advisement model, but I think that your committee would tight focus on to shift dollars, appropriate process, to make sure that right number of advisors, right type of advisors, right type of follow-up with them, on and on and on. The 4-year graduation rate, big one for us, big hill for us to climb, and whether we like it or not, we are truly being measured against other schools, SUS, other HB, other schools in the SUS, and that's our yardstick. It is. So we have to, we need to do, I know, talking to the president, making sure, we tighten the belt to try and get that metric. So it's a tall order, but, if other students have to get infrastructure, get there.
That's a very good point, and maybe for the next meeting, we can actually go into that and have an update on the 4-year graduation rate and what we're doing specifically to enhance and increase that, and what sort of budgetary things that might be good next step. Thank you.
Okay. So I also wanted to update you on some of the changes that have taken place to the performance funding model. As you are aware, Senate Bill 4 requires metric 4 to be changed, right? That's what you were just talking about. The 6-year rate has been replaced with the 4-year rate. It also requires a change in the access rate benchmarks. And then in addition to that, you all will recall last year we went through an exercise to identify a new metric 10, that's the BOT choice metric. And then so this, and I'll talk about it in a second, but the board selected some measures, and the BOG tabled it for a few months, and now it's back in front of us. And so that's the third change that we have to deal with. Here, you guys kind of really addressed this 4-year, and there's some other things I wanted to say about it. But this is just so you can see what the benchmarks are. So Trustee Washington has indicated, if you look at that 4-year graduation rate excellence benchmark scale, in order for us to get on the scale, we have to get up to 38%. And at the bottom, you can see our comparison of FAMU's historical trends on 4-year rates versus the SUS average. And then you can see the goal that we established in our strategic plan compared to the goal that the SUS established in its, the BOGS plan. So we have a ways to go on this, and we understand that Dr. Robinson has us focused on that, and a lot of things that you will hear. Look at our LBR, the resources we got last year. We put the bulk of those resources into this issue. You know, we were laser focused because it's a game changer. I mean, and that's what I wanted to make sure we emphasize today. The 4-year graduation rate is a game changer for us, and we have to make sure we're all on the same page. And Dr. Robinson has us there. I mean, we're there, and that's what we're focused on.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Trustee Carter.
Dr. Eddington, do you know, or maybe I should ask someone, how 60 moments, go back to that former slide. Do you know how many students it would take for us in terms of increasing the number of graduations to go from our 21.8 to 38%? How many actual students? Notice 17 points, but how many actual students would we need to graduate to move that to that level?
Well, it's not numbers, but more so what percentage of the cohort, right? So if we bring in 2,000 students in a freshman class, we need to graduate 38% of those within 4 years to get 1 point, right, on that scale. And whereas for that same 2,000 cohort class, we're currently graduating half, or excuse me, 20%. So it's a tall order to get from where we are. And I'll use this slide to kind of continue answering your question, because you know, we have to think about one of the things Trustee Washington said is, how does this impact us, right? So that first point there is the key. We have to have a new approach, new strategies. We have to have policies.
Dr. Eddington, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you mostly because we need to hurry up,
okay,
but also to directly answer Trustee Carter's question. Based on the 2,000 number, if we bring in 2,000 students in a freshman cohort, we need to graduate 800 of them to be at 40%. 20%, 400. So we would technically need to double the number of students we graduate in 4 years to get to that mark.
Thank you.
So, and
yeah.
can we,
Okay, yeah, so policies, procedures, recruitment strategies have to change, and we've already touched on that last point, that we have to show improvement or we're not going to get any points on this metric moving forward for a long time. Metric 7, there was no direct impact on FAMU because we are well above the maximum on the excellence benchmark. The potential impact is indirect in that the change may allow other schools to get more points than they would have under the old scale. So with the change, if a school had received 6 points last year and now they can get 7, right? They're now more competitive against us since we're being rated against each other. So that's the impact. There's really nothing FAMU can do about it, right? We're getting 10 points and we'll continue to get 10 points on that metric. Metric 10, this is really information, and I had a suggestion. You know, we went through this exercise before. The BOG basically wants us to use a metric that measures the number of degrees that we award to AA graduates, transfers from the FCS with AAs. They want us to count the number of degrees that we award. And what we're suggesting to the board here is that we take this up at your August retreat again, so that we have time to discuss it the same way we did last year, and you all may decide to go along with the Boggs recommendation, or you all may want to go in a different direction. But we wanted to do it then because that'll give us more time to discuss it, and the BOG told us it was okay for us to do that. We did have to give them some preliminary data, so we said we will accept your recommendation pending the decision of our board, and that's what we did, and so that's our recommendation to you on that. And then this was just some of the data that we provided to show you for that metric, the number of degrees that we've been awarding historically, and our proposed benchmarks to the BOG for their consideration. And then quickly, so we have a new dashboard site for.
Is that, hold on, is that Trustee Woody? Mills? Anybody on the phone have a question? So if you are on the phone, can you please mute your line unless you have a question? But if you do have a question, please speak up. In the meantime, continue, Dr. Eddington.
All right. So this is the dashboard site. There's the web address, so you can go and you can see our institutional goals. We have dashboards around these key metrics that we're monitoring. I do want to thank Ms. Barrington and Mr. Greer, who worked to put this together for us. It's a nice enhancement to what we had before. So I encourage you to go check it out and let us know if you want to give us some suggestions on how to enhance it even further. Here, you know.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes, Trustee Gerber.
I just wanted to ask one question. Are you able to see how many people are actually viewing that on the campus? Because we have a lot of online information available, but the question is, are people accessing it?
I imagine they could track that. Yeah, yeah. So here, this is really for you to see where we are. This is our update on the metrics, and I highlighted in red just the topics that we want to make sure we all focus on where we need improvement. We've talked about these already and continue to talk about graduation rates, licensure pass rates. We also need to keep our eye focused on the bachelor's degrees awarded in PSEs and overall number of degrees awarded, because that's a downward trend there. And
why is our bachelor's degrees on a downward trend?
you know, so what we're trying to research that, but the high level answer is, you know, when we had the enrollment declines, is that's when we're now beginning to see the effect in degrees awarded.
Gotcha.
But we're digging into it just to confirm that that's the answer.
Thank you.
And then, so again, I didn't want to labor on these, but I wanted to touch on a couple last points and getting back to the 4-year scale. So this is a graph that really helped put this into perspective, and you all have really addressed this. You see on the curve, FAMU's historical trend. See at the top, the blue curve is the SUS average. But you also see the excellence scale there at the top, you know, so you got to go from 38 up to 50% range, and our projection is to get to 40%, which is a stretch goal for us, but that's what we're focused on. And then again, licensure pass rates. Here, just some preliminary data. You heard about law school yesterday. They have a preliminary number this year of 36.7%. Nursing, the preliminary numbers thus far is 86.49, so that's a big improvement for them. And again, this continues to be an area of high focus for the institution. And then this is, again, is a similar graph for metric 6, percentage of bachelor's degrees. And we've talked about this before as well, just showing you the trend and the decline that has been happening. We're in the excellence range, but we're starting to lose excellence points. So we have to reverse this trend to pick some of those points back up moving forward. So that's a focus for us. All right.
Thank you. I have one question for you to maybe ask the Board of Governors. I just went back and looked at the adjusted metrics. So for the 4-year graduation rate, obviously the excellence is 50%. The actual range is about 12%. For the access rate, the excellence, and we know that maybe one or two universities currently hit maybe that excellent currently based on BOG stats. For the new excellence metrics on the access rate, the 10 is 42%, and I believe there are probably two, us and maybe FIU, are over that 42%. But the range for that, it starts at 6%. So can we try to figure out why we have almost a 30-point spread on one metric versus 12 on another metric? I just would be interested to know sort of what the thinking is around that.
Yeah, we'll follow up, but I can tell you preliminarily, part of it was based on, they looked at the demographics, population in the state that are eligible for Pell Grants, and they use that, I know, to develop the scale, but why it's so broad, yeah.
Especially when we know that, I know that at least any university would hit a 1 on that metric, and not all of us hit a 1 on the other. So just thinking about and sitting here sort of noodling on what the rationale behind that is. Any other questions for committee? If not, sorry, I'm way over time.
No, we're 2 minutes over time.
Okay. Oh.
Not on. Thank you, Chair Washington. Is Trustee Mills on? Yes. Trustee Mills, are you there?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here.
Okay,
Yes.
sir, we're turning it over to you for your committee.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning. And first, I'd like to take a point of privilege and just thank everyone for all of their words of encouragement. Kind of turned into a tough week for me, but I'm glad to be on the call with you guys here at this point. So I will take this time to call the meeting of the Governance Committee to order. And Ms. Zachary, if you would please call the roll call for me. Hello?
Trustee Mills,
Present.
Trustee Moore, Trustee Perry,
Here.
Trustee Washington.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Our first action item for today is to approve the minutes of our March 8th Governance Committee. Are there any edits to those March 8th minutes? Any comments? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion have been moved and approved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our next agenda item is consideration of 2019-2020 legislative budget request. Ms. Barbara Cohen-Pippin, our Director of Governmental Relations, will provide us a quick update. Ms. Pippin? Well, I guess I shouldn't say quick while she's coming there. There's a few of them, so.
This is the first for me.
Go right ahead whenever you're ready.
Maybe I needed a special training in this, right? Okay, good morning again, Mr. Chair, trustees, President Robinson, guests. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the university's 2018-19 legislative budget request, our funding priorities for the 2018 legislative session. For the upcoming year, we are requesting funding for 2 issues: general operation enhancement, agricultural research, education, and training. Both issues are carryovers from last year. For general operations, we are requesting $14.3 million. Initiatives contained in this issue will enable the university to make significant progress on student success efforts already underway. There are 4 initiatives under this issue. We will be asking for $1,050,000 in recurring funds to enhance academic support services to increase retention and the graduation rate. This includes the intrusive advising discussion that was mentioned by Dr. Coleman yesterday. Goodman, sorry, Carl. Goodman yesterday. Basically, what this does is it's taking a proactive approach to advising. It's identifying students who are at risk before they become at risk. This also includes a mental health issue that this board discussed and expressed some concerns with and asked that we look into. And so that's included in there per request of Trustee Mills. The second initiative under this issue is a request for $7.3 million to strengthen our academic programs. As we know, faculty are essential to student success. And these funds will enable us to continue to hire top-notch faculty. So we're requesting $3.3 million in recurring funds for faculty lines and support staff. We're also requesting $4.5 million in non-recurring funds for support packages and instructional technology for new and existing faculty. The third initiative is $2.9 million for online course offerings. This will help us provide our students with flexibility. During the summer, we have students who return to their respective communities and work and have to take courses, and this will enable them to take courses while they're home, thus reducing time to degree and student indebtedness. And the fourth initiative is $2.4 million request for technology upgrades, cybersecurity, and infrastructure improvements. This will help us with retention and will also help provide the necessary security to protect faculty, student, and staff data. And our second funding issue, another, as I said, carryover from last year, is the Agriculture Research and Education and Training, the Brooksville project. The 3,800 acres given to us by the USDA, train new, beginning, and existing small farmers. To support this issue, we are requesting $1.7 million, $535,000 that will be in recurring funds for personnel, and $1.1 million in non-recurring for machinery, tools, and equipment. These funds will be used to support and enhance agricultural research and technology transfer of new farming techniques for small farmers in the local community and around the state. We have a couple of other projects that we're looking into and considering. One is that are not included in this document. One is the FAMU FSU Joint School of Engineering, which we'll be receiving, and one which we are considering, and that's the FAMU, would be a FAMU State College Partnership Initiative. So with that, Mr. Chair, this concludes my presentation of the 2019 legislative budget request submitted for your approval, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions at this time.
Are there any questions from anyone?
There are no questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, thank you. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve these legislative budget requests.
So move. Trustee Perry.
Is there a second?
Second, Trustee Washington. Yeah, Trustee Moore tried to second.
Okay. I was like, okay, we're going to go into a Robert Rules of Order thing here. Okay. All right, thank you. So I haven't been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right, thank you very much. You did well, Ms. Tippin, for your first time here, so no problem at all.
Thank you. So I do have a quick comment, Trustee Mills.
Yes, please.
I would like to say thank you to Barbara for all of your hard work the last legislative session. I was in the Capitol almost every day, ran into Barbara, whether it was 7 a.m. or 7 p.m., stomping the halls for us. Do you think we need to think about getting her some additional help this year? Because I don't know that, you know, how we can't keep doing that to poor Miss Barbara. She was in the Capitol as much as I was, probably more. So, you know, as we think about, you know, how our legislative session turned out, there were some wins, there were some things that we did not accomplish this year, and we do need to think, and I don't know if that's a president conversation or a Ms. Cohen-Pippin on our representation, on our messaging, on our vision, and our ability to execute on the vision. Because it is clear to me that resources went to certain institutions more than others. And how do we, you know, it's our charge to make sure that we're delivering the message and the value that FAMU adds to the state. And so if we're not communicating that clearly, we maybe need to do some due diligence on how to better communicate that, how to cultivate relationships, and what additional services we need to make sure that we're getting the resources we need to move forward.
Mr. Chair, I would also like to echo one of the things about being over in the Capitol. You can find yourself in the position of having to be in two places at one time. And it is very difficult, as great as Ms. Pippin is, for her to split herself in half and meet with and meet with representative on the House side and the Senate side. So we need to look into having us additional help during the session, because it is not an easy task. I've known her for a number of years. When running to the governor, I was lobbying on behalf of the courts. My hat is off to her.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree, and obviously, I think Trustee Washington phrased it well, that, you know, how we communicate the value of FAMU to this Florida community is absolutely important, and the critical part of that is the legislative process. Sometimes, whether we like it or not, the fact of the matter is they are a critical part of our success, and their support of our efforts, our initiatives, and our vision is important. Financially and as well as structurally. So I would also encourage Dr. Robinson and the rest of the staff to think about how we, as we're thinking about resource allocation, how we somehow find resources to enhance this opportunity and for us that we absolutely need for our ongoing success. So thank you both for your comments, trustees. Okay, if there's no other questions on the legislative budget request, we also had some new legislation this year coming out of the legislature around freedom of expression. So I would ask Attorney Shira Thomas if you would present an update to the university's freedom of expression and assembly rights and responsibilities regulation, and in terms of our compliance with these new laws. So, Ms. Shira Thomas, I invite you to come to the microphone, please.
Thank you, Chair, committee members, and trustees. The agenda item before you addresses the amendment to University Regulation 5.005, which is our freedom of expression and assembly rights and responsibilities regulation. Through the Florida Excellence in Higher Education Act of 2018, which is also Senate Bill 4, the legislature enacted the Free Expression on Campus Act, which is Section 1004.097 of Florida statutes, and it takes effect on July 1, 2018. The act prohibits universities from designating campus free speech zones. It authorizes restrictions under certain circumstances, provides for a number of definitions, and also provides that noncompliance with this Free Assembly Act may result in court costs, attorney's fees, and possible injunctive relief against the university. So as a result of the passage of this new law, segments of the university's regulations now conflict and will be superseded once this law becomes effective. Therefore, we have amended our regulation to comply with the new law removing designated free speech zones on this campus. The proposed regulation still or continues to outline some of the president's duties related to freedom of expression and assembly, and also provides guidelines, requirements, and other prescriptions. Though it is recommended that the board adopt the amendments to comply with the new law that was promulgated in accordance with the Board of Governors Regulation Development Policy.
I'll try again. Mr. Chair, move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second? Excellent. So having been properly moved and seconded, just any other questions or comments regarding the new policy?
No questions from
I think you
anyone,
had
Mr. Chair.
Awesome. Thank you so much. In that case, all in favor to approve?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, excellent. Thank you, Attorney Shira Thomas. I appreciate your support there. We also have some updates to our communication and media policy. So at this point, I'd ask Ms. Kathy Times if you would share some those recommended updates to the board, and you can approach the microphone as you wish.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, trustees, President Robinson, and our guests. I would like to give you a few highlights as well as a historical perspective to support the request to approve the updated communications policy, as well as the STI publication and media guide. The current policy was approved in 2008, and the new language reflects changes in the media and marketing landscape and the communication structure at FAMU. Joining me today are Drew Berry, our Associate Director of Marketing, Sabrina Thompson, Assistant Director of Publications, Tanya Stewart, Assistant Director of Media Relations, Veronique George, Social Media Coordinator, and we all work with our staff to update the guidelines. So why were the Communications Policy and Style Guide updated? Well, it reflects best practices in public relations, media relations, social media, publications, website content, and events management. We also work very closely with the General Counsel's Office as well as Information Technology Services and the President's Office to update our policy. The goal is to ensure the uniform use of FAMU's brand, including proper use of the university's updated logo as well as modern colors. And the updated policy also directs faculty, staff, consultants, and vendors to seek approval from the Office of Communications prior to disseminating news releases, scheduling news conferences, and using FAMU's official seal as well as logos. The rebranding process actually started back in 2014-2015 with a university-wide brand council, which was formed. Surveys and focus groups revealed FAMU's color scheme was inconsistently used. We really couldn't identify FAMU's colors. The logos were considered not modern by those who participated in these focus groups. And among those who participated were our students. And as we look at recruiting, that certainly is an important audience. Also at that time, the industry, uniform manufacturers and companies like Nike were working with universities to enhance their color schemes and logos, and quite a few universities around the country continue to do that today as technology changes. Ultimately, FAMU's Brand Council chose a modern orange and green. The colors are used on FAMU.edu, on brochures and marketing material designed by the Office of Communications. And I'll ask Drew Berry to show you one of the latest marketing material pieces that the President uses as he speaks, and that will show you the new colors. This photo shows the university's old color scheme and the updated orange and green, which is used as part of the design of those brand new Marching 100 band uniforms. Another place where you'll see the new colors used is the College of Ag and Food Sciences display, which is really nice and stands out at our marketing and recruitment events. Next slide, please. The Office of Communications also designed and modernized the FAMU block logo system to give schools, colleges, and units like the Everson Student Union, for example, a way to customize their identity for use on brochures and other marketing material. The text logo there to the bottom left may be used for special occasions like invitations to a school or college's event. The Rattler head, as you can see to the right, is only approved for use by athletics. Next slide. This is important because we often find that the university seal is used on invitations, and it is restricted for use on official documents such as diplomas, legal documents, Board of Trustees reports, commencement and convocation programs, and official university stationery. The updated communications policy is designed to ensure the university community seeks guidance from the Office of Communications, which manages production of FAMU videos, publications, images, and promotional material, as well as social media and web content guidelines. And as you know, a lot has changed in the past 10 years, and it's really important that we educate everyone about the social media and web content guidelines. Our office is also responsible for reviewing and approving documents for the university. However, oftentimes those documents and publications don't necessarily make it to us before they are printed and shared with the masses, and this is really important. We also conducted a social media audit which revealed more than 400 FAMU social media accounts exist, and most were unauthorized, and many did not follow our university guidelines or best practices for posting. We reviewed the communications and social media policies and practices of universities such as Harvard, Tufts, University of Florida, as well as HBCUs, including Winston-Salem State University and Jackson State University, to update the policy and style guide, in part because many of these universities recently updated their brand and style guidelines. So how will we inform and educate stakeholders about the changes once they're approved? Next slide, please. Well, I'm glad you asked. We're already working to inform and educate our university community about the proper way to use FAMU's brand and best practices, and they are very receptive by providing university-wide social media training and branded social media graphics, scheduling social media consultations with the FAMU community, and when the board approves the updated style guide as well as the policy, we plan to take action to remove inactive pages. We are also in the process of notifying and working with the General Counsel's office to remove inactive pages and those that have copyright infringement. And we will also offer media training. Next slide. Once the policy is approved, as I noted, we will share it as well as that comprehensive style guide that we updated with stakeholders to enlist their help protecting FAMU's brand, including presenting it at the annual faculty conference. Our communicators network is a very important part of our structure. It meets monthly and has representatives from schools, colleges, departments, divisions, and other units, as well as our Dean's Council. We have been presenting our updates there with the help of the Provost Office. And the Office of Communications also meets weekly with the Information Technology Services and invites representatives from colleges, schools, and units to meet with us when they request assistance enhancing their web presence. We also recently presented best practices at the National Alumni Association Convention last month in August, and they were very receptive and provided the presentation of the association to the association's webmaster to post on FAMUNAA.org. We will also share best practices at the Rattler Roundup of student organizations, at senior leadership meetings, and make them available via FAMU Info and online. Later this month, we're also really excited about introducing university-approved templates for flyers, brochures, and other popular collateral to the campus community. It's called Design Conductor, and these templates are web-based and will make it easier for colleges and schools and units to access and create marketing material that will align with our brand standards. That, Mr. Chair, concludes my presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Times. And just to provide a little bit of perspective, as Ms. Times mentioned, the last time we've updated our communications policy was roughly 10 years ago, and so some of you had BlackBerries at that point, and the iPhone had just come out. So considering that social media is probably probably the primary way of communicating these days, it's obviously well beyond time for us to update this. And what we're addressing in these policies are both the the style guides, et cetera, relative to fields and logos, which are very important. In fact, most corporations will have a balance sheet item that talks about the value of such things, and they are certainly valuable to our institution as well. But the second part of this is our media and public relations policy as well, as you guys have read through. So the one thing I did ask the team to make sure was included is that we sort of, acknowledge as a board and as a staff and relative to the university, we're all on one team, and so that the board follow these rules or guidelines as well, and make sure that we're running, our efforts through the communications team, Ms. Times' team, et cetera, as well. So, are there any questions about the policy from anyone on the committee?
Yes, I have one question there.
Please.
With the shades of our new colors, are there going to be any cost associated with that as we transition to the shades of orange?
Yes, as always, and it's undetermined at this point because it's going to take a phased-in approach. One thing that we're already doing is making sure that we continue to use these colors. For example, when Student Affairs has just ordered additional brochures and flyers, and I would suggest that we take a look at the next phase of ensuring, for example, that we're not using the seal anymore when we are printing or producing new material. One thing that Charles Collins, our former graphic designer, told us, and he still works with us as a consultant, he really is very passionate about this topic, and he did some research and looked at how other universities, when they, for example, Howard, Florida State, rolled out their new brand standards, and it actually increased the sale of our merchandise because they work with vendors to ensure that we were manufacturing new merchandise that complied with the new color scheme. So actually, the universities, he found, made more money. And so the impact is yet to be determined as we update.
And I take it that we'll also do the phasing athletics colors. Mr. Chair, Trustee Grable had her hand up next.
Thank you. Ms. Grable.
Thank you, Trustee Mills. I want to compliment Ms. Times and her staff on an excellent explanation of how we're going to implement these new style guides, and you mentioned also a media guide. So I want to thank you for that. And you and I did have a conversation about this, and I also had a conversation a few weeks ago with Ms. Kanya to talk about the issue of the Freedom of Information Act requests. And I didn't see that mentioned in the presentation, but I did have a conversation with Kanya and didn't recall that when I talked with you. And I'd like to see
Can you get up and show it, please?
I'm sorry?
Continue.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So I wondered, for the media guide, have we addressed the Freedom of Information Request Act, Freedom of Information Act requests? Because I know that I have had some concerns mentioned to me from a faculty member regarding the request for their Freedom of Information Act.
Yes, Dr. Grable, it is listed and updated in our communications policy as well as extensively in the media guide, directing stakeholders to ensure that they reach out to our office or the general counsel's office whenever they receive requests for information, and that they do it as soon as possible. And so that's something that really is reiterated in this policy as well as our new style guidelines.
Trustee Lawson had a question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Mills. I guess it's really just a recommendation more so than a question. With a lot of the things that are going on college campuses, I think we need to take a look at our crisis management plan again, and our communication process around incidents. Just so that, I know, unfortunately, I'm looking at Drew. We were on the phone at 2 o'clock one morning, several months ago, dealing with an issue. So I just want us to revisit that and make sure all of us are updated on that, as hopefully we never need it, but in today's environment, you know, you just never know.
And Mr. Chairman, we worked with the president as well as others on the leadership team last year to update that crisis communications plan, and it really was determined that we need that educational process, including working with DRS, to educate people just like we'll do with this new policy on exactly what's in the crisis plan and the best way to communicate with each other as well as the public.
Mr. Chair.
That's an excellent question, Mr. Chairman. And so, just to follow up this time, do we have sort of a target or timeline when we think that might be in place, or our updated crisis communications plan will be in place?
The crisis communications plan has been updated. It exists. It's a matter of us rolling it out. And as a matter of fact, when we were reviewing our priorities for this month, I talked with Drew Berry, who will be primarily taking on the responsibility of making sure that we educate our campus community about the changes. And so it's a priority for us to do it this month.
Mr. Chair, Trustee Moore would like to be recognized.
Thank you, please.
I just want to, of course, wearing the budget hat, and since it's not yet determined what the new phased-in approach will be and the costs associated with it, I'm assuming, and I would gather that you're working directly with the budget folks as well, and VP Ford and all others.
Yes, one item that we discussed with Dr. Hudson as well as the police chief is the drills. They are doing them individually throughout the campus, active shooter drills as well as other drills with individual units and departments. And we were looking at how do we have a budget so that we can do it throughout the campus.
Okay, so my question is not specific to the activities, but specific to the colors that we've just adopted for the university, and as we move forward, the transition, moving it from one, whether it's printed collateral, whether it's uniforms that impact athletics or whatever.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I thought we were still on crisis.
No. Yeah.
Yes, we have had some conversations with athletics. At this point, athletics has a different color scheme, if you will, but it has been brought to our attention several times that the uniforms are not consistent. And as far as the budget goes, we will be talking with the CFO and athletics about it, because it's not a quick solution. Large universities and their athletics, they're working with Nike to produce one set of uniforms with colors across that spectrum at that campus. And speaking with our athletics, and I don't want to be the expert in that area, it's not that simple. So we look forward to having that conversation with the AD and athletics to see the best practices for working with them on the colors. As far as our brochures, we have started implementing the colors and the use of them with our marketing material, which is why we wanted to present this to you today, to actually have an official policy so we could take that next step to move forward with making sure the entire university community, athletics, even working with our vendors on producing shirts, are using these colors.
So I'll try and close it out with this. Just to follow up on that, the adoption, we agree on it today, the board approves it, there's an adoption piece. Just wanting to figure out, and you said it was undetermined when I think Judge Perry posed a question about the potential cost. The thing that, what I'm asking is that there be a level of coordination with budget, because it will be a financial impact. And as we go forward, maybe communicating that so that we'll know I think no one's against the change, it makes sense. Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
And Ms. Times, just to clarify, because I'm not sure I understand, is this meant to, are we replacing items, or is this really more of a kind of go forward compliance type scenario?
It's a go forward approval process, because we are using the colors to print material, as well as, for example, you saw them in the new band uniforms, and now we would like to continue to move forward with the full implementation and getting everyone on board, which is why it was really important to have the presentation where you see the logos and how they're properly used. So from our colors to the logos, this is all an effort to make sure that our entire campus community is moving in a direction which is best for our university brand.
Okay, so there's not really any incremental budget impact. Like, we're not going to take a bunch of stuff off the shelf and take it to the thrift store and buy new stuff. It's really just how our ongoing operations and our purchases now in compliance with a standard guide.
Exactly. People are already buying
Then that makes sense, yeah.
T-shirts and uniforms, and we're just making sure, for example, they are using the block logo now in these colors as opposed to the others.
Okay, great.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions?
There are no other
And
questions.
Dr. Grable, thank you. Dr. Grable, I apologize earlier. I was fumbling with my mute button and called you Miss Grable, so I apologize for that. But, okay. All right, where are we here? Okay, so thank you very much. This is more of an information item. We don't really require a board vote. Is
It's
that
actually an action
correct?
item.
It's action.
It's an action item, Mr. Chair.
It is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Colors.
Okay. I just didn't know we had to do that. But anyway, so having said that, is there a motion to approve
Mr. Chair, move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Having been duly approved and seconded, if there's no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you very much. The motion has been approved.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is Dr. Cynthia Hughes-Harris and Dr. Mary Simmons will present a proposed university regulation regarding our new or updated smoking and tobacco use. So Dr. Harris and Dr. Simmons, please.
Thank you, Chairman Mills. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. President.
Morning.
For several years now, Florida A&M University, through the School of Allied Health Sciences, has had a commitment to the health of the citizens of our community, our immediate campus community, as well as our surrounding community. This commitment to health led us to the belief that Florida A&M University must make a statement, take a stand, that increases awareness of the perils of tobacco use, eliminates the use of tobacco of all types, and prepares our citizens, especially our young citizens, prevents our citizens, especially our young citizens, from engaging in tobacco use. This statement can be made by FAMU becoming a smoke-free campus. Through funding from the Florida Department of Health, the American Cancer Society, the Truth Initiative, Dr. Mary Simmons, and the faculty and students of the Division of Cardiopulmonary Science, as well as the other members of the School of Allied Health Sciences at both the faculty and student levels, have spearheaded this initiative. And Dr. Simmons will present the proposal at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. To the chairman, trustees, President Robinson, I'll provide you just with some medical history stats. First, the tobacco industry spends billions of dollars each year on cigarette and tobacco advertisements and promotions, specifically to the underserved and African American communities. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, tobacco use is the leading cause of preventable disease and death in the U.S. Secondhand smoke is just as harmful, and the only way to protect non-smokers is to eliminate smoking and tobacco use. Cigarette smoke kills more than 480,000 Americans per year, with more than 41,000 of these deaths from exposure to secondhand smoke, which indicates that a 100% tobacco-free, smoke-free campus is imperative. Tobacco-free policies are a growing trend in college campuses across the United States. Today, there are approximately 422 colleges and universities that are 100% tobacco-free, smoke-free campuses, and more join the list every year. However, only 56 of the 102 HBCUs are tobacco-free, and 9 of the universities in the state university system are 100% tobacco-free. So we propose We are requesting that Florida A&M University follow the trend of the 422 colleges and universities and 56 HBCUs across the United States, specifically our universities in the state university system, have a healthier campus by eliminating tobacco use. The regulation proposes a ban on all tobacco products, and I won't list them all, but there are several of them that are in the new regulation, and that would help us to eliminate tobacco smoke on all campuses, including the satellite campuses, in any vehicles that belong to the university. We are asking for that. How are we going to enforce it? Well, it's not to punish them, it's to help them. So we have collaborated with the Student Health Services and Big Ben AHEC in the community that will offer free cessation courses and classes to those who wish to quit smoking. So any violators, how we're going to enforce that, if they, with the student code of conduct, we will refer to that. And any faculty or staff, we ask that anybody who's in authority would just reinforce the policy and require or refer them to the smoking cessation classes. Thank you. We're entertaining any questions at this time.
Okay, are there any questions from any of the trustees? All right, so this one feels like you might.
There are.
Yes.
This is Dave Lawrence.
Okay. Okay.
First of all, I would instinctively be in favor of this. I smoked for 20 years myself. Both my parents died of cancer from lifetime smoking. I wish I knew more about this particular proposal. Which schools in Florida? Said 9 of the 12. Is that right?
That's correct.
So what are the 3 that don't?
FAMU, New College State, and Polytech.
I'd love to see this come to pass. I think it'd be important. I'd like to know what the university president thinks of this. But I just finished a marvelous book called The Emperor of Malady, which is about study of cancer, how it came to be, etc. Incontrovertible that this causes enormous death, enormous social and business cost in this country, and why wouldn't we be a smoke-free campus? When I was the publisher of the Miami Herald, we put such a rule in effect. There was enormous concern from staff, well, how are you going to enforce this? What are you going to do? It turns out that people really despise secondhand smoke, and the employees themselves enforce it, or the students themselves would. It turns out not to be a great enforcement issue. I think this is something we ought to do, and clearly something that, did you say half the HBCUs do?
Yes.
It's clearly something that the vast majority of state universities do, including all the big ones. They've apparently done this, faced it, and overcome it, and life goes on. So, Mr. President, what do you think?
That is, well, I'm in strong support of this initiative. I've seen, like you, Trustee Lawrence, members of my family, leave us because of smoking. In fact, when I think about what might be the most common thread in the generation before mine, it is some form of cancer, and in most cases, some form of cancer related to tobacco use. And I want to emphasize tobacco use. I'm trying to think of anyone in my grandmother's, generation who didn't either smoke or dip snuff. And I'm trying to think of anyone in her generation that didn't die of some form of mouth or stomach cancer, and those who smoked lung cancer. And so I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the university to send a strong message that we really promote healthy lifestyles for our students and our workers and anyone who ventures upon this campus.
Is there any reason you think this is difficult to enforce, difficult to come into being?
Well, I think it empowers us, right, to take the appropriate actions that might otherwise not be done, because, you know, a person smoking on the campus where a police officer might just pass him and say, don't smoke. It doesn't cost him a dime for him to say, stop smoking, right? But there may be some costs that I'm unaware of. I think in the long term, in terms of the savings in the health care of the individuals who smoke themselves and those who are impacted by secondhand smoke, well, you can't put a price tag on that. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move this as a policy effective with the next school year, giving folks some chance to figure out what the wrinkles are, et cetera. That's my motion.
So Trustee Lawrence, thank you for that comment. I think I kind of sense that we're all in agreement, but I wanted to obviously come through the committee. It'll hit our consent agenda for full board support in about 45 minutes.
Yes.
Move approval of the item.
Yes.
Second, Trustee Perry.
Excellent. Thank you both. And just as a point of clarification, having properly moved in second, just a point of clarification, this policy, well, first of all, you know, we talked about this a long time ago, but anyway, this policy does include, you know, e-cigs, hookah, juuling, and a variety of other sort of new forms, if you will, including all the old forms of use. So all in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion has passed as well. Okay, so we have
very much, Trustee Mills. Maybe just say a very strong thank you from school on behalf of everyone, and especially our students and faculty who have been promoting this for years.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The last item on our list today is the Board of Trustees self-evaluation. On Tuesday, you all should have received a link to the self-evaluation tool. It actually doesn't take very long to complete, and so what I am going to just ask for our committee as well as the full Board of Trustees is that we'll be trying to complete the self-evaluation in the next couple of weeks. And then that will give the university's Office of Assessment the results that they can compare with results from last year and provide the report as we prepare for our retreat in August. Okay, and they've also posted a timeline for that later. But at any rate, the point being is that if you wouldn't mind in the next couple of weeks taking a few minutes out and completing the self-evaluation tool. And then the last, I guess there's one more item, is the president's self-evaluation goal setting. The president has been working on his self-evaluation, and I believe Dr. Robinson is scheduled to complete that by the end of this month. Let's see here. And that is correct, right? By the end of this month. Okay. And then, so I'm just going to make a recommendation that so we're going to create a timeline that sort of coincides with the fiscal year. So we've had some issues relative to, you know, the timing of Dr. Robinson's contract relative to the timing to our fiscal year. And now that we're kind of, you know, in 1 year, into 1 year of this, we need to make some adjustments so we can get all of this stuff aligned so that we can now sort of do this evaluation that's more in line with our overall fiscal year when we're measuring everyone's performance relative to that. And just a quick question, does anybody have any thoughts about that or any comments relative to that? Issues?
No, there aren't any, Mr. Chair.
No concerns? Okay, perfect. So what that will do is that, again, we'll make sure you all get the timeline on when we're supposed to do our work, but we've asked to try to, what I've asked Attorney Barnes-Miles and Dr. Robinson to do is sort of condense some of the historical timelines for these evaluations so that we can, you know, get those items in alignment, and then obviously we'll be in much better shape for next year as well. So there's no concerns about that. That's the timeline, and the emails you'll see will be aligned with that. Okay. Are there any other items for this committee for discussion?
Mr.
Any
Chair,
other
no one
questions
else-
from anyone?
No one else that indicated they have anything to say, Mr.
Excellent. And Trustee Perry, as usual, I appreciate your support throughout this meeting. Being remote is a little bit more difficult, so thank you very much. And being no other items for this committee, I will consider this committee adjourned.
Thank you, Trustee Mills, for that informative session. At this point, if it be the pleasure of the board, I'd like to keep moving through our last committee report, and we'll take a break between this committee report and the beginning of the formal board meeting. Again, good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Special Committee on Athletics to order. Ms. Zachary, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Lawson.
Here.
Trustee Dortch.
Here.
Trustee Grable.
Here.
Trustee Lawrence. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have only one action item. Colleagues, at the March 7, 2018 committee meeting, the meeting minutes were posted, or meeting minutes are posted from that meeting. I trust that you've had an opportunity to review them. Are there any corrections to the meeting minutes? Then as though
I move approval.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. Any questions? No discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. One more aye. Got it. Motion carries. Thank you, Dave. He was in deep thought, so we'll give him a break there. Okay, that covers our action item. At this point, I'd like to move into our discussion items. I'm asking Vice President Wanda Ford to provide an update on the status of our 17-18 athletic budget. And I'll give you just a little backdrop, and I think everyone is up to speed on this, but I want to keep everybody on the same page. You all know that we've carried a deficit for several years in athletics, to the point that it is a cited audit item. It has been a cited item by the Board of Governors, and we've also had to respond to a legislative committee on what we're doing to manage, contain, control our athletic budget. We also are in the process of having monthly meetings with the Board of Governors to talk about where we are from a budget and revenue standpoint as it relates to our athletic budget. So at this point, I would ask Dr. Ford to give us an overall update, because our next Board of Governors update is this Friday,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Tomorrow.
Good. Tomorrow. So I'd ask Dr. Ford to give all of you an update of what we plan to share with them, because if you recall from our March meeting with the Board of Governors, it was a fairly contentious discussion around the incremental $1 million that we had to deal with. So I'd like to start with that as the backdrop and ask Dr. Ford to go from there to where we are currently.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Morning, members of the board, Mr. President. As of May 22nd, over 78% of the revenue has been collected for athletics. Current outstanding revenue includes investing in champions, advertising sales, royalties, and the remaining portion of the Florida Classic, we should be receiving within the coming weeks. As we stated in previous meetings, there is a budget shortfall. We are addressing the shortfall by garnering additional revenue from investing in champions, additional fees collected as a result of the increase in student enrollment, FAMU Rising campaign, the boosters, the National Alumni Association, Tag Brag, and other allowable sources. So this is the projected revenue for fiscal year 18-19. The budget officer worked directly with the coaches and the AD to develop the budget. Ms. Mathis will explain the process that was used and some of the cost-saving strategies that were developed to balance the budget for 18-19.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Board of Trustee members. We worked tirelessly on this projected revenue for athletics. We looked at every aspect of athletics. Basically, we know the fees. We base the fees on 10,000 students for 18-19. The football gate receipts, we have 6 games. We took the average from the 4 games last year and came forth with a 6 games amount of 620,000. We looked at the game guarantees. We only have one for 250,000 for football. We have 662,000 game guarantees for basketball, women and men. We looked at the concession sales from previous years. We projected 100,000. And basically, we looked at the season tickets that way. The advertisement, we met and we talked about contracts that are in process right now. The NCAA dollars are basically what we get each year. We looked at the royalties. We looked at each one individually and did the projections. Investing in champions, well, right now we're already at 900,000. So, but we projected 900,000 for next year. The classic, we projected 8,000. We did all this conservatively because we feel like with the new coach and everything going on, the ticket sales at the classic should be more, and we're hoping that our gate receipts will be more. But we did everything very conservative. We met with the coaches, the sports administrators, and everything was discussed. We looked at all the travel. We've already started working on getting the hotels. We're doing everything in advance. We have set forth training and procedures so that we will be able to stay within these dollars.
Thank you, Ms. Mathis. So, if there's not a question, I do want to dial back to this year and go back and ask Dr. Ford if he could be a little more prescriptive in exactly how much is coming from each of those buckets, and what does that do to the incremental $1 million gap that we identified in March? Because that's the question that we'll have to answer. Right? Yes.
I mean, you can do that question.
You have another one? Okay.
So, as you stated, the projected shortfall is $1 million, over $1 million. So the plan is to garner additional revenue of $450,000 for the Investing in Champions campaign. We received over $150,000 that was collected as a result of the increase in student enrollment. The FAMU Rising campaign, which was described yesterday and talked about by Dr. Friday Shroud, $300,000 has been set aside for that. The boosters have agreed to contribute $50,000. The National Alumni Association, $50,000. Tag Bragg, and Dr. Easton will talk about that a little later, $100,000. And then we have 2 other allowable sources where we will receive $250,000 to contribute to the shortfall. So that will equate to $1.3 million in additional revenue to address the shortfall.
So we realistically able to say
we have a
that
plan.
we balance the budget 17-18.
That is the plan, yes, sir.
Okay. Trustee Washington.
So my question is related to current year and then next year. Where specifically did we fall short here? And then how did we address that in the current year budget? And then did we build in a buffer? Because we obviously take that one as far as revenue expenditure.
Right.
3 questions.
Okay.
1, what specific areas did we fall short this year? Did we look at that in the projections for 18-19? And then did we also in 18-19 build in a buffer between our projected revenues and expenditures so that if we have a shortfall, we're not having to look around, scrounge around, borrow money?
So as you can see in the highlighted area, the $395,000, that is what we did not collect from last year. So we actually brought that forward for this year, and we added that in the amount that we need to collect for 17-18. And then we'll do the same thing for 18-19 if that's the case. If we don't balance the budget at year end, then we will carry that balance forward. When they developed the budget for 18-19, one of the things that they did to avoid having the problems that we have encountered this year is that we ran reports to look at the expenditures for the previous fiscal year as well as 16, 17 to make sure that we had actually captured everything in the budget, so that we wouldn't have some of the surprises that we actually had this year.
Yep.
So this.
Yeah, I'll also address that too. You raise a good question. Elephant in the room is there were dollars spent that were not on the budget. Right. So the opportunity moving forward that I think Dr. Ford and Ms. Mathis have addressed is including those items, because there were some, call it basic operating things like security that weren't in the budget. Dollars were spent on those, so consequently we had the overage. So what they've done is they've gone back with Dr. Easton's help and looked at what does it really take to operate the enterprise, and put those numbers on the spreadsheet or into the budgeting process, and squeeze them as tight as we can to continue to operate, and then to try to make sure that the revenues will at least meet, if not exceed, those numbers. So you have a really good question. I just want to be really open that there were dollars spent that were not budgeted. That's what really drove the overage. Now the question becomes, how do you prevent that, right, in the future? That's the question that the Board of Governors asked me directly. So I think that it boils down to the things that they've done from the standpoint of addressing rotations in staff and training of their own people around the budgeting process and consequences of operating outside of that process. Rick Givens and his team have now been duly involved, not only in oversight, but also in the training of the folks in the department. So if you guys are okay, Dr. Easton, why don't you address the whole compliance issue within athletics? Because again, your question, Nicole, excuse me, Trustee Washington, is very appropriate given where we are.
In terms of the area of accountability, one of the things we looked at, as you notice on your slide, is that all of the coaches and senior staff participated in a 2018 NCAA regional rules review in Atlanta. That started this past Sunday and went until yesterday. During that session, all of our coaches and some of our team from the registrar's office went to Atlanta. We attended various sessions during that whole time. Also, during this past week, we had a private session with members of the NCAA committee. We had a private Q&A and it lasted for about an hour, maybe more, where our coaches had an opportunity to ask questions about areas of concerns, and I felt like that went well. It went over time, and the staff was extremely helpful. What this will do for us not only will send a signal that we're in compliance with all the rules, but we're trying to be proactive and learn about various things and ask questions what we will face going forward. The other thing that we've done is this past February, the athletic department senior compliance officer started monthly mandatory compliance meetings, and those meetings were for all staff as far as implementing of new rules and regulations and accountability measures that all of the staff will follow. Also in March of this past year, as athletic director, I started mandatory monthly meetings for all of the head coaches. And those meetings dealt with internal controls, communication, the implementation of best policies and practices, and university protocols in terms of following those. Also, in terms of those monthly meetings, we looked at various topics that were around the country in terms of the things that various departments were facing, and we had discussions of those in terms of best practices and how to avoid some of the pitfalls. As opposed to waiting for things to happen, what we wanted to do is go and look and see what was happening around the country and in our conference and address those issues before they became a problem here. This coming July, we'll have the entire athletic department will participate in a mandatory two-day workshop, and we're asking the senior administrative level as well as Dr. Robinson come in. And what we're doing is looking at self-improvement. One of the things you've heard talk about today was community service. And what we're trying to do, even before the spring game, our spring football game, what we went out and we had community representative people to go out and help in terms of service, to make sure we've tried to identify some concerns of our fans that go to football games. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we have people out moving around outside of the stadium and meeting the needs of those people and try to answer those questions. Also, we're instituting a soft toe for people who park in the wrong spots. And we're trying to address all of those. Our people that go out will be ambassadors, and they'll all be dressed alike. In the spring, we had them all dressed in the same type of polo shirt. In the fall, we'll have them dressed also in the same type of polo shirt and khaki so that our people can identify them, and they will be out to answer all of their questions. Also, in regards to this area, we're in the process now of identifying all of the things that could possibly happen. I think one of the things is a former football coach that we would do is that we would have what we call a hideaway. What we would do is go and address any possible scenario that could happen in the course of a football game. What we have done with our staff is that we're looking at any possible scenario that may come up during the course of a game and be ready to address those issues. Also, we've identified our staff and placing our staff in certain areas around the stadium. In other words, we can't go look at the game. We got to be in our area to make sure that we're taking care of any problem that may come up before and also after the game. It won't end when the game is over. We'll continue to serve and be there to help everyone to address those needs. Also, we've had some training as recommended by Chair Lawson. We've had 2 of those in terms of with Rick Givens and Stephanie Holmes in terms of bringing everyone aboard, talking about everything from the P cars to how you handle various situations or scenarios that may come up. Sometimes we play devil's advocate in those situations in terms of the possibility of things that may happen and trying to look at those things to address those. Well, we've had 2 of those. We're planning another one, and I mentioned briefly about the shades of orange and green. What we've done is we've already looked into that. At present, our vendor does not provide the type of shade or the shade of green that we need for our uniforms. We are under contract with that vendor for this football season. At the end of this football season, we've also identified another vendor that will have.
I'm sorry. So this is good. So thanks for the update. But I wanted to, because I want to pivot back to Trustee Washington's question. I just want to be sure that we are tight on how do we prevent the overspend from happening again. And I think what you guys have done is you put those unplanned expenses into your 18-19.
That is correct.
You created oversight between yourself and Dr. Ford on all expenses.
Correct.
You provided training to your staff as well as detailed consequences to your staff of spending outside of budgeted expenditures.
Yes.
So I just want to be like really deliberate and clear on what the team has done, because this is a really issue for us because it has far-reaching consequences. And I think that when you have overspend in excess of $1 million on a $10 million budget, it's a big deal. So I want to make sure that you all understand what happened as well as what we're doing. Again, we will provide an update on tomorrow to Governor Link and Joe Malashevsky on our final fiscal year-end finish in the June. And looks like our projections are to come in on target, which is great. So I do need to thank a number of people that have worked on this. I do want to thank Greg and the NAA for all of their support that they've given us to help come up with incremental dollars to afford scholarships to athletes. But this is one of those where I think we have to be very deliberate, and as we speak, we then have to do what we say around this. That had not been done and I feel compelled to make sure that you guys have full visibility, transparency on the issue, because it's one that Dr. Robinson and I have had to face the music on several occasions. And I do think we're making progress. I do think we've laid the bricks to be able to move forward. I invite any of you that want to sit in on these monthly calls to jump on. We'll continue the monthly calls.
We can't.
What's that? Oh, I'm
We
sorry,
can't.
you can't. There's more than one trustee. Sorry about that. Strike that from the record. But you can get the notes and the feedback from those calls. But again, the goal around this is to, again, do what we say we're going to do, but also to be transparent so you all feel confident that the system is working. So you can't jump on the calls, you have to take my word for it. So I know you guys probably want to talk about some of the additional marketing tactics that you're putting in place. So Mr. Alexander's here. So if you guys could briefly get to that, and then if there aren't any other questions, we'll close this session out. Sure. I'm sorry, Trustee Washington.
So we saw the projected revenue for 18-19. The question about the buffer in there, do we still have a margin? I've seen making incremental costs upward. I haven't seen making any changes downward. So do we build a buffer specifically into our 18-19 budget? I know you said you made your revenues conservatively, but on top of that, have we had any cost saving? Have we cut the budget basically to allow us for some flexibility if we do need to go up? Instead of making a budget at 10,000 and our revenues at 10,000 and our expenses at 10,000, maybe we should make our revenues at 10,000 and our expenses at 9 so that we do have that buffer instead of having to borrow every time we overspend.
So we're going to continue to develop cost-saving strategies to reduce our expenditures. We did budget revenue conservatively, as we stated. And keep in mind, when the budget was developed, the expenditures were $11 million. So we got them down to, $14 million. And so we did implement cost-saving strategies to get it down to what it is now, which is closer to $10 million. So, you know, at this point, we are just really revamping athletics when it comes to the financial side of the house. As we stated, we are preparing training. We have conducted training on everything related to accounting, accounts payable, travel, budgeting, and we continue to work with the AD and the coaches because it's a collaborative effort. We monitor on our end, but we can't see everything. So that's why it's great to have the support of AD Eason and also Rick Givens, who is helping us on the compliance end,
I think
and the task force.
I think I'll come back to your question with this. The numbers right now are very tight. There is no margin for it, right? So where we're trying to get more margin for error is programs that talk about that they've created on the marketing side, because you know in any business model you can cut expenses only so far, then you have to grow revenue. So I think we've trimmed the expense line from 14, call it 10.5, 10.6.
Yes.
So it's about as tight as we can go without cutting programs, which we don't want to do from a compliance standpoint. So to your question, right now there is no margin, there is no excess. I mean, expenses in the revenue line meet. So the opportunity is will some of these marketing tactics help us grow the revenue? Having 6 home games help us to grow the revenue. Talk about some of those new ideas that they're proposing to create a little more cushion on the top line.
All right. The key is to increase revenues.
Yep. Gentlemen, if you want to, oh, sorry, Trustee Perry.
The only thing I want to mention is while we're trying to grow revenue, tracking highway, spend more than half.
Great. So if you guys could, we're running short, but I would top line some of the tactics that you put in place to help us grow the top line. As you know, again, we've done the expense cutting from 14 to 10.5. So now how do we grow the revenue side?
Let me show you this slide, and then I'll turn it over. You go to the slide with the financial. Yeah, this is one of them. In terms of, you see where we are right now, there's another one in terms of tag brag. this back. While we're trying to find this one, I would just mention one thing in terms of before Ramon started showing you what we're trying to do. That with Tag Bragg as an example in terms of the revenue, in terms of these programs that we're implementing now. As an example, 2 days ago, I received an email from a lady that would like to give us $50,000. He's trying to find a way. She was asking, I contacted Dr. Friday Stroud, is that how can we break it up into how she wanted 25 for one program, 25 for another. Also, there was a gentleman that also called this past Monday. He would like to send us a check for $7,500. Last night, I received an email of a picture of a check that someone was sitting in. So these funds that I'm talking about now have not been added into. Also, we were in Atlanta this past Wednesday night, and there were a number of people that wrote checks for all of these programs. And tomorrow night, we'll be in Gainesville, and we anticipate getting more revenue from them, as well as President Greg Clark of the National Alumni Association indicated yesterday we have more revenue coming in that's specifically earmarked for academics in light of, in concert with all of the money that was given at that particular time. So Mr. Alexander, if you will.
Thank you, A.D. Eason, and to the board, Chairman Lawson. I'll be very brief. My name is Ramon Alexander. I'm helping spearhead some of our strategic advancement efforts. And I want to emphasize the word strategic because we have to be strategic. Just very quick, Napoleon Bonaparte once said the 3 most critical ways to win a war. The first is money, the second is money, and the third is money. So when you look at the conundrum of some of the challenges that we face in the athletic department throughout the university, it is a critical need to develop strategies, not fundraising, but stakeholder engagement. When you look at your chair, there's no way that a chair can stand on 1 or 2 legs. If your chair that you're sitting on now probably has 4 legs. And so we are vertically integrating a strategy that we feel is very realistic and feasible to establish those legs. The first leg is an increase in how we operate investing in champions. First, one of the things that I recognize in my assessment is that our direct contact with our constituencies and how we establish our universes and how we establish micro-targeted universes within the university was lackluster at best and did not have a comprehensive strategy around it. The 3 things that are critical to fundraising, or I would say strategic engagement, is the ask, the volume of the ask, and the yield. So if you don't ask and your universe is small and you're tapping into the same sources over and over again, it makes it very difficult to diversify your revenue streams. So in that, we have created a tracking system internally where all of our staff is able to engage and expand the universe and also come up with micro-targeted strategies. One of the reasons why we've been successful with increasing the numbers to meet this June 30th deadline is making direct contact with the various level of engagement and donors. And so we feel comfortable with that plan. As you see the numbers, we're well over $550,000 brought in, and we're well over $930,000 committed or pledged, which is awesome. We feel that we will reach the $1 million mark very easily as we go into the football season. Along with that, we have a new initiative called Tag Bragg. We actually have $467,000 worth of inventory around campus. This banner here, and I'm going to try to multitask and hold this up. Patrick, if you can come up and help me out for a second. And so this banner here is a large banner that will be affixed throughout the contours of the campus. We have already secured $65,000 in Tag Bragg. Half of that in pledges, half of that is in roughly. And our goal is to achieve $100,000 in Tag Bragg by June 30th. Those are very realistic numbers. We want to thank Dr. Robinson. We have his receipt for $5,000. He's already purchased his banner. Dr. Eason has purchased his banner. And I will be contacting each of you as a former member of the Board of Trustees to ask you all to be involved. We have 3 different levels. We have a level at $1,250, which kind of hits the outer perimeter of the campus. We have a $2,500 level and a $5,000 level. This will be a year-in, year-out program. So at the end of the year, your banner will be taken down right before spring football next year. It will be signed by Dr. Robinson, Dr. Eason, and our head football coach. And so we feel confident. We have very realistic numbers on here that we will be able to tap out in that regard. That is our second stool. The third tool that we'll be rolling out is our mid-level donor program. We're calling it the Rattler Seal of Approval. This will engage our local business community. Our university and our stakeholders and our constituencies are involved with investing into local businesses. We want to make sure that our local businesses invest back into the university. And so this Rattler Seal of Approval will be where businesses will affix a large gold logo on their business, and they will have the official Rattler Seal of Approval. And our alumni base will be trained to go out and ask local businesses, do they have their official Rattler Seal of Approval? We believe that this will easily bring in another $150,000 to $175,000 for the university. Our fourth piece is our corporate sales piece. Now, we're giving you conservative numbers, but we've hired a former SBIan, fresh out of college, and we have used our relationships to have a very robust corporate sales model that does not diminish our value and our brand. Right now, we said roughly we have brought in and identified about $275,000, and I don't want to overpromise, but I feel very confident that where we are with some of the relationships in regards to sponsors for each game, sponsors for homecoming, sponsors for the north end zone, and all of our affixed marketing throughout the stadium, that it will be well above the budget amount that we have. And then our fifth and final piece is our grassroots piece, is our reoccurring piece. As I said before, we have a lot of alumni in my age group that do not donate to the university because there's no sense of engagement. And so as we build out this model, we build out this framework, we will be engaging younger alumni that may not have developed a sense of donor confidence with the university at the $50, $100 a month reoccurring basis. We believe by putting all these pieces together, creating a vertically integrated calendar where we have wraparound engagement and customer service, because you just can't contact people when you want money. You have to engage them on a year-round basis, that we will position ourselves long-term to bring significant dollars into the university.
Thank you, Alexander. So, for, what you see is an enhanced level of, use your word, strategies around growing the top line as we continue to chip away at managing these. So with that,
Sure, it was just one in terms of clarification. Can you tell me again what was the revenue last year, or projected revenue last year, and then what are we forecasting this year?
Oh, or just overall?
Total.
Yeah, so it's 10.6 million.
Last year?
Yeah, this year, the current year.
And then the forecast is?
9.8 million. So there was an overage projected for 456,000. There was excess projected revenue for this year of 456,000. But the additional expenditures, when you net, it's over $1 million shortfall. So for 18-19, the revenue was 9.8 million.
9.8 million.
Yes.
Current year.
Okay, for 17-18, I have it right here. For 17-18, the budgeted revenue was 9.8 million. The projection is 10.6 million. So we're projecting that we will have 456,000 in excess revenue for this year. But then you also have those expenditures.
Sure.
Okay, and when we net the expenditures against the excess revenue of 456,000, that's a $1.3 million shortfall. So then I talked about the revenue that we're projecting to address the shortfall.
And
yes.
Next year budget, for next year's budget, what's the
It's
revenue?
9.8 million, which is pretty much the same as this year, even though we think we're going to increase investing in champions and some of the other areas.
So,
we wanted to budget conservatively, so we kept it pretty much the
so
same as
essentially
this
this
year.
would be upside, what we're talking about now
Yeah.
in terms of,
Yes.
budgeted flat.
We did.
We accounted for those unaccounted for expenditures, but from 14 to 10.
Right.
But we roughly budgeted.
Right.
With the anticipation that all of the
We're going to
programs
increase
that we
revenue.
talked about provide the upside that Trustee Washington asked about as far as the cushion.
Right.
So guys, this has been a complex issue to deal with, so I do appreciate all the questions, all the interest. If you all are okay, I'm going to call this to a close. If there are additional questions, I don't want you to feel you can't ask. Please feel free to reach out to Dr. Ford directly. Is there? Yes, Mr. Alexander?
Thank you. I do have applications for each board member in regards to investing in champions and tag brag, so I will hand it to you directly, and we really need your help.
Thank you. All right. So at this
did
point,
mine
if
at the
there aren't
convention.
any additional questions, I'm going to call this part to a close. And again, if you have additional questions, please, I'd say reach out to Dr. Ford. She's well versed on all of the issues. At this point, we'll draw us to a close. Let's take a 5-minute break and try and transition quickly into the full board meeting.